Hi guys, today we're going to be going over reading passages to figure out unfamiliar words and then putting them in a graphic organizer. We're going to do one together and then you'll do one on your own. Today we're going to be reading about Lewis and Clark. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark are important to the history of the United States. They navigated the land that Thomas Jefferson bought during the Louisiana Purchase. Before this area was added, the United States was much smaller. Thomas Jefferson needed someone to explore the new land. He hired Lewis and Clark to go on an expedition. They would discover rivers, mountains, plains, and more. They were all new to the United States. They didn't complete the expedition alone. The two men had 30 other men and one woman along. Sacagawea was very helpful to the team. She was a member of the Shoshone tribe. She was able to help the men communicate with people and navigate around the land. Okay, so now we're going to look at our graphic organizer to figure out what we need to do. We have our unknown words, clues from the story, and what I think the word actually means. Okay, I'm going to leave this screen up. You can pause the video, and I actually want you to read this passage. So pause right now, please. Guys, welcome back. Thanks for pausing and reading. Okay, so now let's look at the word navigate. So let's go find it in our passage. I believe it's in there twice. They navigated the land that Thomas Jefferson bought during the Louisiana Purchase. Before this area was added, the United States was much smaller. Okay, so they're on the land. They're exploring it. Okay, those are some keywords. She was able to help the men communicate with people and navigate around the land. So it all keeps coming back to the land. So I think that's a really big clue. Remember, you have to delete that part. The land. And this is kind of like your notes section. It doesn't have to be a complete sentence here. It's just you taking the words and information that you think that's going to help you figure out what the word actually means. Okay, so navigate the land that Thomas Jefferson bought during the Louisiana Purchase. Before the area was added, the United States was much smaller. So he needed someone to explore the land. Okay, so I think based on that, because it says they navigate around the land, and I'm actually going to add that to our clues that we should write around the land. Around the land. I think based on that, since they're going around the land, that navigate means to move. And I'm going to see if this makes sense. They moved the land that Thomas Jefferson bought during Louisiana Purchase. That doesn't really quite fit. So move doesn't work. What about they traveled the land? Because navigated, they were moving around the land. They were moving, but it didn't really quite fit. But traveled would work. So they're traveling the land. So navigate is another way to say travel. Let's see if it works. They traveled the land that Thomas Jefferson bought during the Louisiana Purchase. Notice how, because navigated, it has the ed ending. I'm adding the ed ending to our word traveled. She was able to help the men communicate with people and travel around the land. Yes, that makes way more sense than the word move. Okay, so that's all we had to do for that first section. So sometimes we only have one clue, sometimes we have multiple, and that's okay. Expedition. Jefferson needed someone to explore the new land. He hired Lewis and Clark to go on an expedition. They would discover rivers, mountains, plains, and more. They didn't complete the expedition alone. Okay, so to me, a big hint was to explore the new land. And if it helps you when you're doing this, if to write this down first and then type, go for it. Okay. So what would be a good word that would help us understand expedition? Is there anything else? They didn't complete this expedition alone. Ooh, 30 other men and one woman came along. So other people came with them. Oops, sorry. And sometimes if you need to make the text box bigger, you just drag. Okay. All right. I think I have an idea of what the word expedition means. I think it means trip. So let's see if it makes sense. He hired Lewis and Clark to go on a trip. They didn't complete this trip alone. The two men had 30 other men and one woman along. I think trip actually is a pretty good example of what this word means. Okay, discover. Okay, last but definitely not least, they would discover rivers, mountains, plains, and more. Okay, well, this land was the first time that someone had to explore it. So the first time that someone went there on a trip, and they would discover rivers, mountains, plains, and more. And it was new land. So to me, the new land is very helpful. Notice how I'm going back and not just reading the sentence that the word's in. I'm going back and I'm rereading multiple sentences to help me. And sometimes you guys might actually have some prior knowledge. Like I've heard the word discover in other sentences in other stories before. And that helps me understand it today when I'm reading the story with you guys. New land. And to me, the mountains, rivers, let me make this bigger. Let me go back and make sure I'm writing down the right thing. It was rivers, mountains, and plains. And plains. So that really is helping me figure out what the word discover means. New land, and it was mountains, rivers, and plains is all the things that they found. They found. To me, discover means when they were looking for this new land, they saw all these new things. They were finding all these new things. So I think the word discover is going to be more like the word find. So let's see if that makes sense. They would find rivers, mountains, plains, and more. I think it actually works. Okay, I'm going to go in and type it. Delete that. Find. Perfect. Okay, so now I've read my story. I've went back and took those, what I think the words mean, and I went back in the story to see if it made sense and if it was a reasonable idea of what that word meant. If you get stuck on the handy workers one, you can always ask a sibling or parent to help you, but try your best to do this as much as you can on your own because you've got to be able to figure out how you can find your context clues. I am going to read the handy workers passage with you guys, and then I'm going to let you guys start your graphic organizer on your own, okay? A construction worker is an important community helper. They help to build homes, buildings, and more. Without them, no buildings or homes would be constructed. They work with their hands. Some operate cranes. A construction worker works with others to help complete a large building. Before they can begin, a blueprint is drawn on a piece of paper. This helps get an idea of what the building is going to look like. Without blueprints, construction workers would not know what to do. They wear hard hats to keep them safe. Hard hats protect them from the hazards of work. Okay, so this is your handy workers. And then this is your graphic organizer. You have blueprint, construct, and hazards. Okay. So I want you to think about this, and if you have any prior knowledge of Blueprint, and I will go and circle all the words, and if you have any prior knowledge with the word construct or hazards, okay? And I'll add the circles on for you guys so you don't have to do that part. Also, when I was reading, I realized I didn't go over one thing with you guys. You can use these tools like the highlighter, like I can go back. So around the land, I could have taken this highlighter and I could have highlighted certain things that helped us figure out what our word meant. So, like I could for discover rivers, mountains, plains, and more. If I wanted to go back and highlight that as something helpful to us, I can. But you don't have to do that part. It's just there if you want it. Okay? So just do your best to figure out what the unfamiliar words of blueprint, construct, and hazards mean. Write down clues from the story and what do you think those words actually mean. And it can be in your kid language, okay? Do your best, and I know you guys are going to do amazing. Bye.